Welcome back to my series on integrating AI into your Game Master workflow. So in the previous videos, I started off by giving you an overview. In the second video, I talked about creating your master prompt, essentially your GM philosophy document, and then also creating your context documents. We also talked about how to get Claude up and going and working for you. If you're tuning in for the first time, my preferred AI engine as of June 2026 is Claude AI. As always, if you're tuning in later, find the model that works best for creative writing at the time you're starting this up. So, what I want to talk about now are the things that you're going to need to create in addition to your context documents and your master prompt to make AI and Claude really work for you. And this is where you're going to create skills. Other sources of AI are going to call these system prompts. But basically, what you're doing is you're teaching Claude how specifically you want something done. And for a game master, this is important. You don't want it just giving you any old thing. You want to tailor the stuff that you're going to generate with it to your specifications. So the two most important skills, I think, right off the bat is your NPC generation skill and your encounter generation skill. Now, there's a lot that can go into this, and this is going to be very specific to what you prioritize as a game master. Now, if you're anything like me, and if you're here on YouTube trying to learn how to do this stuff, I'm going to wager that you are. I've been game mastering for almost 20 years now, and I have been a student of the game. I've read books. I've read countless articles. I've read, blog posts, Reddit posts, Facebook posts. I've watched. I couldn't even tell you how many YouTube videos. I've really tried to learn everything I possibly can in order to become good at being a game master. At this point, I have learned so many good ideas. I've probably forgotten, more good ideas than I can remember at this point because I have a human brain and it can only hold so much information. I'll read an article, find something in there I really like. I'll start to integrate it into what I do. Then I find another really good idea that I like. And now I'm focused on that one and I've forgotten about that first idea. It's hard to keep track of all of these good ideas I come across. I've taken notes. I have a 3 or 4 page document on my laptop just for, boss battle and encounter generation. All little tips and tricks I've picked up from articles, YouTube videos, and a multitude of other sources. But I will say this, it's a 4-page, 5-page document. When I'm sitting down to create an encounter, it's a lot to juggle. It's a lot to keep track of. And so this is where AI really can start to shine. I went out of my way to teach Claude everything that I had learned and everything I'd picked up over the years. I shared those notes. YouTube videos and other sources that I found helpful, I fed those into Claude, and taught it exactly what I was interested in. And there's so many different ways you can go about this. If there are articles, videos, notes, all this kind of stuff, you can synthesize all of this into a skill. And the nice thing about, the AI, if you've watched a lot of these videos, read all kinds of articles on being a game master, one trend is really going to stand out. There's not a lot of game masters who are creating videos that are necessarily sharing things that are completely new. If there's a video on a topic, there's a lot of it I've heard before, but there might be one idea, two ideas, or maybe a reframing of an old idea that really resonates with me. But one of the things that you're going to find, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap between different videos, articles, blog posts, whereas, there's not a lot of necessarily unique pieces, to each one of these sources. But what's nice is as you're creating the skill, AI will help you synthesize it all. The things that are essentially redundant, it'll collapse into one idea, one central idea. And then it'll also pull out the things that are genuinely unique into its own category. So you can, almost think about it like, when folks are doing like a major research paper, like a doctoral dissertation or something, you might be taking hundreds of sources and you're synthesizing it down into one single document. And AI is very effective at doing this. And so when I came time for me to create my NPC and my encounter generation skills, I took all of these sources. And one of the things about YouTube, they generate, what is it? Summaries of each of the videos. Not summaries, but I can't think of the name right now. But, when they do the subtitles, they have basically the text for the entire video. You can copy and paste that into Claude, and you could say, Claude, this is a video from YouTube. I'm going to be making a skill on NPC generation. Can you summarize this in a way that's focused on skill generation? And so what it'll do, it'll process all that text and summarize it in a way that's going to be most useful for skill generation. So I was able to do that with multiple videos that I had, saved in my YouTube account. If you're like me, you probably have a folder for GMing, and you have countless videos saved in there on a variety of different topics, things that resonated with you when you watched them. So I was able to take, all of those essentially scripts from all of those videos, feed it into Claude, and create summaries. And then I was able to take them and synthesize it into a skill. And so now what happens when you're generating content, using Claude, you can instruct Claude to use the skill when helping you create encounters. Or maybe you've come up with a counter all by yourself and you want to stress test it. So you can, put the encounter in and ask Claude, can you run this encounter against the encounter creation skill? What's missing, what could be made better or stronger. And once again, you enter into this collaborative back and forth process with Claude, as you're trying to put all of this together. So let me break down the steps for you. Get all of your sources. Some of that's going to be in your brain, so you might do an info dump via the voice to text chat. You might have articles, videos, personal notes, all related to either NPC generation or encounter generation. These are two separate skills, so I would do it separately. But what you're going to do is you're going to bring all of these sources of information into one chat, and you're going to ask Claude to read all of this information and condense it into one cohesive system. Once he does that, you're going to go back and forth with Claude. You're going to take a look at what's there, what might be missing, and you're going to craft your ideal skill. What are the things you want Claude to be thinking about or suggesting to you or creating when you're making NPCs? What about encounters? There are so many moving parts to an encounter, so many things that are easy to overlook. But once you create this system with Claude, it'll be able to help remind you of certain things, keep track of things for you, and ultimately create the best versions of the encounter that you possibly can. So those are two of, I would say, probably the most important skills. Now, let's say you're going to be creating custom monsters or enemies, using Claude. So this is probably a very good thing that you'll be doing there. As you're brainstorming threats for your players, coming up with your own monsters and antagonists, you're going to be putting together stat blocks for them. So you're going to need to teach Claude how you want your stat blocks presented. Maybe you have certain formatting preferences, so you're going to create a skill for that. So what I've done is I've just taken PDFs, monster PDFs, brought it into Claude and said, hey, study this document, take a look at how these stat blocks are formatted, and create a skill. This is probably one of the easier skills to create because chances are you're going to be following the format of some source, maybe a specific D&D format you like, or in the case of the system I'm using right now, Savage Worlds. And you're going to teach Claude how to make your ideal version of the stat block. So anytime you come up with all the skills and stats and this, that, or the other, it knows exactly how to output it for you. So that one I would say is pretty straightforward. Now, adventure output. That's tricky. Everybody likes their material presented in a different way. And so this is where you're going to work with Claude to come up with yours. Now, if there's a published adventure that you thought was perfect, you loved every element of how they put it together and organized it and presented it to you, guess what? Bring that into Claude. Tell Claude, analyze this adventure and create a skill on how to create adventure outputs exactly like this. Now, anytime you create adventure material using Claude, it's going to output it using that exact same format that you prefer. And this is something you can tweak and change. Maybe you found an output that was near perfect, but it would be perfect if this, that, or the other thing was changed. Well, guess what? You get to change it. And so now you have your NPC skill. You have your encounter generation skill, your stat block skill, your adventure output skill. The next one I'm going to suggest. Now, a lot of this will depend on how you play your games. Are you at a physical table in real life, or are you online using a virtual tabletop? The one I'm most familiar with is Fantasy Grounds. Though I imagine the philosophy of what I'm going to share next is probably somewhat universal. I imagine Foundry probably has something similar, and some of the others probably use something similar as well. So as of right now, if I want to import a stat block of a monster into Fantasy Grounds, it's a pain. It needs to be formatted just a certain way. If I want to import it directly, and even then, I need to download a third-party extension and install it into Fantasy Grounds in order to do that. If I want to import it with the tools they have available without an extension, it's a pain. It's a lot of work. And when you're importing multiple stat blocks and you're, running multiple sessions, that's lost time you can't get back. What about if you're creating custom items to hand out to your players? That's also a pain to have to import into Fantasy Grounds. Now, I remember when years ago, not the current version of Fantasy Grounds, but the original version, I remember this convoluted process you had to go through if you wanted to create mod files. The Fantasy Grounds community in the forum, they are fantastic. I can't say enough good things about the people over there. I mean, they are so incredibly helpful when it comes to getting Fantasy Grounds working for you and helping you manage and create and import all of this content. That being said, as helpful as they can't eliminate the time element here. And it is a time suck trying to get material, custom material into Fantasy Grounds. But it doesn't have to be. You know why? Claude. Or honestly, any other AI engine should be able to do this for you. So this is something you're probably going to want to do on your desktop. Because so using Claude, there's a couple of different sub-programs within Claude. Claude AI is the chat. That's the thing you're going to be using on your phone, on your iPad, or whatever mobile device that you're using Claude with. But on desktop, you also have access to Claude Code and Claude Cowork. What's interesting about those two programs is they can actually operate directly on your desktop. So they can go around your computer and do stuff. Whereas Claude AI Chat is limited to the app. So what's powerful about this is when if I create a mod file for Fantasy Grounds using Claude Code, it inserts it right into the folder for Fantasy Grounds. When I'm editing it, it edits it right there in the folder for Fantasy Grounds. I don't have to do anything. So, but let's go back to the beginning though. How do you get this process or workflow started? So I open up a Claude Code session on the desktop app. I start a new chat. I drag an official Fantasy Grounds mod right over into the chat. And I tell Claude Code, I want to create a skill for creating Fantasy Grounds mods for my tabletop RPG. What I want you to do is study this mod file and learn how to create mod files for Fantasy Grounds. And then once you've done that, I want you to put it into a skill. And it does it. It studies the file, figures out all of the formatting and all the ins and outs of creating a Fantasy Grounds mod, and then it creates the skill. Once the skill's done, I could take a completed adventure with new items, stat blocks, drag it into a chat, and I can say, read the attached file. What I'd like you to do is extract all the stat blocks and new items and create a Fantasy Grounds mod file with these items and stat blocks in it. And it does it. Now, it is possible you might have to have a couple back and forths with it. In my experience from when I did it myself, Claude got it, I would say, about 95% right in the first pass. There was a couple formatting issues when I opened it in Fantasy Grounds. I just communicated those formatting issues back to Claude, and he fixed it. And so by the second go round, everything was pretty perfect. So that's incredible. I didn't have to go through any painstaking process to import into Fantasy Grounds. I put the file in Claude, asked him to import it, and it was done. Now the Fantasy Grounds mod is created. New documents, new material that I create, I can just drag and drop it in and be like, can you add the stat blocks in this adventure to the Fantasy Grounds mod? And I tell it the title and the name of the mod. This way it knows where to go. But that's it. Now anything I create gets imported in a snap. I can't explain how much time that saves me as a game master. If you're experienced in using Fantasy Grounds, you know exactly how much time you can lose when it comes to importing things and getting things into Fantasy Grounds you need for your game. Claude can make some of those things go away. Um, so I highly recommend it. Now, these, I think, everything I've given you now, I think are the essentials. If you do all of these things, you're going to have an effective workflow for being a game master using AI. The only one that I would say is optional is the Fantasy Grounds mod, and that's only if you don't use Fantasy Grounds. If you're an online GM, I think it's necessary. And like I said, if you're not using Fantasy Grounds but you're using another virtual tabletop, I imagine you could do the exact same thing. I can't imagine any reason why you couldn't. And so you can make your process of importing things, especially custom content, incredibly easy. Because if you're like me at all, sometimes you find this stuff in the books a little boring, or you've got a monster that just doesn't have enough punch, maybe as a boss fight or something. And so you're trying to, create custom things in order to challenge your players. Or maybe I've got players who've been playing these games for, decades. And so if I just throw a standard orc at them, it's like, the millionth time they've seen an orc. So I need to customize these things. I need to change them up. I need to do things that are going to be surprising for my players. And once again, Claude makes that a little bit easier, especially as an online GM. Getting everything working on your computer is not always seamless, but Claude can make that a lot easier. All right. So I have one final thing I want to talk about, and I would say this is the most complex of the things I'm going to talk about. And it's something you don't necessarily need, but I find it incredibly helpful. So if you start researching AI more generally, not necessarily related to RPGs, one of the big things out there in the field right now is what they're calling a second brain. Basically creating a resource of information that functions as, just as it says, as your second brain. And what they're doing is they're using Obsidian Notes. This is, I don't know how to describe it. It's a note-taking app, but it has a very interesting file structure where you can connect things and cross-reference things. They have this map thing which shows all the connections and everything. It's a lot. I had looked at Obsidian Notes a while back because there is actually a whole an RPG community around it who've created all kinds of plugins and things in order to basically create an RPG dashboard using Obsidian Notes. And so it's a very effective program as a GM. Some of the other ones out there that a lot of folks use OneNote. I've used that a bit for cataloging information. Notion is another one that a lot of people like. I've used that one as well. But one of the things about a lot of these apps, there's a lot of front end stuff you have to do in order to get it up and working. And from what I've been able to gather, there's also a lot of work that goes into maintaining these databases. Once again, it feels like a pain. And I just don't have the time to be maintaining a database when I've got a lot of other things that I do. I've got a family, I've got a job, I have other hobbies besides tabletop role playing, but then I also love TTRPGs. So finding ways of creating a more efficient workflow are huge. Once again, Claude. So the big thing in the AI community now is connecting Claude to Obsidian Notes and letting Claude curate, and help you develop this second brain. So all the things that make using Obsidian feel onerous to me can all be done by Claude. You don't have to create any of these connections. Claude will do it for you. You don't have to enter things into the database. Claude will do that for you. So essentially what you're doing is you're creating a repository for all of your campaign's information. So for me, and the way this works in my instance, my Obsidian database is the source of all the information for my campaign. It has all of my lore. It has my NPCs. It has my adventures. It has all the factions. It has all the locations. Everything. All organized. It has all of the session logs. So whenever I run a game, it has everything that happened in that game. It has, what else does it have? It has a little bit of everything. But it has all my players' backstories. It has all of the ideas I have for where the campaign could go. And it's all curated by Claude for me. If I need to find something, I just type it into the Claude chat that's right there embedded in Obsidian and say, like, I can't remember, what this NPC was doing the last time we met them. Claude pushes it right up onto the screen for me. I don't have to go digging through my notes. I don't have to go through pages trying to find it. It can give it to me. And whenever I create something in Claude Chat, I can import that, and Claude Code, because Claude Code is the one that you use with Obsidian, will then file it for me and update everything in the database with this new information. Because it's not just that you feed new information into Claude and it just files it away. It cross-references it wherever else it might show up, making sure everything in your database is consistent. When I need a new context document for an adventure I'm creating, so let's say I'm creating an adventure on, let's say, the Brotherhood of Steel from Fallout, and I don't have any of that information in my chat files. I can go into my Obsidian database and ask Claude, can you put in my outbox, because I have an inbox and an outbox in my Obsidian database, can you put a context document for the Brotherhood of Steel, because I'm going to go create an adventure in Claude Chat. And it outputs everything it has on the Brotherhood of Steel, and I'm able to drag and drop that into Claude Chat and start creating. I don't have to go looking for anything. I don't have to copy, paste, compile things into one document. I don't have to go through reading it all just to update myself on everything. Claude will do it for me. Once again, it adds in this nice, efficient layer to my workflow. Now, this is, getting that all set up is complicated and is beyond the scope of this video. What I am going to do, there was a video, a YouTube video that walked me through the setup. I'm going to leave the link in the description. This way you can do that. And so that pretty much wraps up what I have so far. I'm still learning this stuff. I've only been doing it for a few months now, but I've been so blown away by what I've gained from it, how it's improved all of my workflows, how it's improved the quality of the content I'm putting on the table with my players, that I felt compelled to make these videos and hopefully help some more GMs out. When I went out there, I couldn't help but notice that there was a lack of information about this. And anytime AI is brought up in any kind of role-playing group or forum, there's a dog pile. Folks have a lot of strong feelings about AI, And so it's much harder than it probably should be to be able to have productive and quality conversations about how to actually leverage it, within a game master's workflow. So for that reason, I actually went ahead and started a Facebook group. The link for that is also going to be in the comments. I wanted to create a place that's for folks who are running games. They want to bring AI into their workflow, and they want to talk and collaborate with other people who are doing the same thing. And you've discovered either the hard way or from watching other people get chewed up that you just can't do it in the regular RPG forms. The moment you bring up AI, it gets ugly. And the conversations get immediately sidetracked about whether or not you should be using it at all. If you're watching this, I'm assuming you're using it or want to use it. So please come join the group. It's brand new. I'm hoping to grow it, and we could start sharing resources, talking about integrations and how to get all this stuff up and going and working. So if you stuck with me through all these videos, thank you. I hope you found this useful. I'm not doing this to build a following. These are all one cut, no editing. I'm not doing anything flashy with these videos. I just wanted to share something that I picked up and learned in the recent months and realized that there was nothing like this out there. So I'm hoping to save you some of the growing pains I had to go through as I figured some of this stuff out. And I'm not even there yet completely. I'm still, refining a lot of my own workflow because I'm pretty much learning as I go. So I hope you found this useful. Come join the group on Facebook if you're interested. And if I come up with any other topics in this realm that I think are worth sharing, I'll make another video in the future. But I think this is it for now. Thank you, and see you again later.